Poetry is one of the purest form of art because it doesn't have the opportunity to be corrupt. Films, on the other hand, as the worst in a way in these aspects, because mostly commerce dominates the art.
Yeah.
Because that's the only flaw I find in this medium. That you need a lot of money. I hope it is changing slowly with these amazing devices, the phone and all that.
Hi guys, welcome to Chalchitra Talks. मेरा नाम दिशा है and today we have a very special guest episode with Adil Hussain. He has done more than 80 movies across 9 languages in art house cinema, mainstream Bollywood, as well as international cinema with movies like Life of Pi and The Reluctant Fundamentalist. If you're new here, we are a recommendations based channel that brings you some of the finest recommendations on books, TV shows, music, movies every single week. So make sure you're subscribed. And with that, let's get into this episode. Hi, Adil sir. Welcome to Chalchitra Talks. It's so good to finally have you here with us.
Absolute pleasure to be
How
talking
are
to
you? The last
all
time
of you.
we spoke, you were in
Good.
quarantine.
I know. I was in quarantine for 10 days and it was very strange because that was the first time that COVID got me. And I had been sort of somehow managing to, navigate across the globe without getting COVID. But finally, they got me and I was very weak. I just had fever for one day and there was no other issues with smell or taste or anything. But it made me very weak.
So, were there any movies that you watched or books you read that you would like to recommend?
Books, that's the thing. The thing is that I haven't been getting time to read books for last 5, 6 years. I recently taught Sapiens, I guess, but I could not progress because the phone calls and messages. Have you read my script? Have you read my script? Have you finished my script? Have you started my script? When are you going to tell us whether you're going to do it or not? So all the guilt, I feel that, oh God, I'm making them hanging around for me, and which is not a good feeling.
So you said you are not getting the time to read books because you have been reading a lot of scripts, but every person has those pockets of stillness in their life, the things they go back to. Like you said, you have been spending a lot of time with your family. But apart from the family, what are the things or that you do to unwind that are like those pockets of stillness that you're very selfish about, that this is my space and I won't let anyone come in this space?
I'm very lucky to be introduced to certain practice of meditation by my mentor.
Wow.
So that is my anchor. And I do that almost every day. I believe that quietude is the place where one has to anchor oneself. As you said, stillness,
Yeah.
quietude, stillness, neutrality, larger space within whatever the name you have. So I don't have to go somewhere physically, wherever I am. When I drive and when I cook or while I'm home, the best part is that you don't have to go to a gym
Yeah.
to do that.
If we can speak more about this topic, like the meditation that you do, is it guided meditation or is it not guided? What exactly is it?
It is sometimes guided. My mentor during the lockdown, he started uploading a lot of guided meditations, which generally comes once a week. But since I've been practicing this for last 21 years, and he has guided us so well that you can guide yourself.
And when did you start this? Is it the thing that you started in lockdown? Like you said, you were introduced by your mentor. Have you also tried it before?
21 years, since 21 years.
Wow. Do you also like go to these videos or the stillness videos on YouTube? Because the way I discovered this was through Eckhart Tolle. Like if you might have heard of his name, Eckhart Tolle. Like there's this book of his, Power of Now. That really got me into it. But are there any more spiritual people whom people can follow if they really want to get into meditation? What can be the right endpoint for that?
There are so many books. I read lots of books. First one towards Indian mysticism was Ramakrishna Paramahansa. In Bengali, I read it, and which was known as Ramakrishna Katha Amrita. Then, of course, Yogananda Paramahansa, Ramana Maharshi, and hundreds, probably thousands of books which had been written by the great master Sri Aurobindo, then Lahari Mahashay, then the shamanistic books that I read before I was introduced to Indian mysticism. I read a lot of South American practices of shamanism. Then I realized that that wasn't meant for me. I mean, I wasn't meant for it. Thankfully, that I got introduced to Indian mystics, and then I found my mentor, or mentor found me. I mean, I can't take the credit that I found him. Till 2004, I got introduced to him in 2000, and then till 2004, I read a lot of books. Then in 2004, I realized that all the books on the planet, if you keep it one side, and the other side is just 1 hour of practice, is the most important part. But at the same time, they have their importances. Books are mostly, if you are already practicing, then books are mostly for reconfirmation, for, that you are reminding, oh, I have experienced it already. And then you realize you sort of form a sort of an idea, an intellectual idea. There's no one way to go for it. And as Ramakrishna Paramahansa Dev says that Jato Math Tata Path, as many opinions, as many paths,
Yeah.
So for everybody there is one, and it will. You may not be even seeking at this point of time, but you are on a path already, because Prakriti or nature is not going to leave you alone till you become. Till you are completely polished. A lot of books on theater also, which helped me a lot. Like Grotowski is one of my most revered acting and theater and philosophy teacher, who's a Polish man, and I read his book called Towards Poor Theater. He wrote another book, not he wrote, but someone compiled all his books, writing research papers and all that, called the Source Book of Jerzy Grotowski. And Peter Brook, for that matter, and the Open Door, and all these great actors. There's this Japanese actor called Oshii Oida. He wrote this amazing book, and all of them were sort of somehow talking about similar things, not the same things, but similar things. How acting is connected with your life, and that the journey of an actor is towards becoming, if I take a metaphor of Jesus Christ, that is to walk towards Jesus Christ, to have a bigger heart, so that you can embrace without any judgment. You can embrace Hitler without any judgment, without any kind of iota of any kind of judgment towards any character that we play.
Are there any autobiographies that you really particularly like?
The only autobiography that moved and touched me the most was My Experiment with Truth by Mahatma Gandhi. I think he is one man that India will find it very difficult to understand. So is Bhagavad Gita, because it talks about Bhagavad Gita, and what Gandhiji talks about is something so subtle and so not attractive. It's so subtle and so passive, something that it doesn't come on your face. It's like the difference between a poetic film and a action film which punches on your nose. Art is probably, for me, is about where the cinema or the piece of theater or a book is expressing very gently what is happening behind the surface, which is not visible to naked eye. You have to have a microscopic curiosity, if not the eyes, because we cannot have those eyes. I feel that to be able to see something which is not on the surface, which is behind the surface, behind the veneer, behind the natural, so-called, like a painter, for example, Dali, the surrealist, and Picasso, the cubism master, and the great painters of that era. Who's Van Gogh, for example, they saw something completely different. Each of them, and each of them are so beautiful. And poetry is one of the most beautiful example of that. Of course, I'm not talking about everybody's poetry, but the great poets. I was just recently invited to recite a poetry of a master in Assamese language called Nilamani Phukon. The poem says that the poems are for those who do not read poetry. It is such a practice that you don't have to worry about money. Mostly poets write. They don't write it to sell because they know it is not going to be sold. Nobody reads poetry.
Yeah.
So they write something which is they really want to write, something which is their innermost expression, with the usage of this vocabulary and and metaphors and similes and to concise it, to make it short as they can. And it's one of the best ways to describe art, probably. So poetry is one of the purest form of art because it doesn't have the opportunity to be corrupt. Films, on the other hand, as the worst in a way in these aspects, because mostly commerce dominates the art.
Yeah.
Because that's the only flaw I find in this medium, that you need a lot of money. I hope it is changing slowly with these amazing devices, the phone and all that. Nowadays, because of the photography medium is slowly changing. It's changing in the sense it's coming to smaller devices like a phone. Otherwise, it takes a lot of money. And as soon as money comes in, somebody, and most of the people, those who are with an artistic bent, they don't have money.
Yeah.
It's like it never goes together for some reason. That's
Yeah.
probably the design of the nature. That, okay, I give you this, but now I will see how pure you remain with your form of art.
I want to ask something which is not related to recommendations. This is about which was that BC to AD event of your life when the calendar restarted, something that impactful.
Probably the day I got selected for National School of Drama,
Nice.
one of the most significant days. And I was very fortunate to have these amazing teachers who taught me us so much of love and affection and diligence, sincerity. They will come at 2 o'clock in the night if you call them.
So I read that you did stand-up comedy for a few years. Do you still follow the stand-up scene, and do you have any recommendations on that end?
Very risky to recommend. Why I'm saying risky? Because most of the stand-up comedians are, they talk truth to the power. There are a lot of them also, like Hassan Minhaj, for example.
Yeah.
He's very good. I really like him. And he not only takes on the government, but also takes on all these multinationals and the companies and
Yeah.
the school system and the loan system there, took on India as well. But at the same time, as I said, that we spoke truth to the power when we did stand-up comedy in Assam. We were always very, very political, and we always did political satire, always social political satire. Yeah.
So how did these years of stand-up help you in what you do now as an actor?
Probably it gave me the to understand the equation between the audience and the performer, and the ability to improvise. And that is, technically speaking, content-wise, it made me aware of what's going on in the society. A lot of reading has gone into to understand the equation between individual and society and individual and the nation.
So how important is music in your life, and what's your relationship with music?
I think music, another thing, apart from poetry, probably.
So actually, we are not able to hear you because I think there's a bird very close to the phone, very, very close. So we are not able to hear you.
No, the bird is nowhere near me. Oh, there is, yeah. That's so sweet. Go away. Just give me a second. Go.
We are really sorry, sir.
Ah, gone. That tree had some birds there.
Oh, nice, nice.
So music, the kind of music I hear, a lot of folk and classical music from across the globe. I have a collection of around 5 to 6,000 different pieces from across the globe. I hear a lot of Western classical, then jazz, Indian classical a lot, especially Drupad and Rudra Veena, Japanese classical, South Korean classical, Iranian classical, folk.
Wow.
What it does to me, it plays, letting us know that how beautiful life can be. You know? How it's an abstract form. But as a human, when you hear with a lot of care, at least, if not deep meditative listening, but at least when you hear it and you respect it and you're listening to the music, you're not doing something or talking to someone and music is playing at the back and all that. So I don't do that.
Good.
You're introduced to yourself, the other aspects of yourself which you didn't know existed.
Yeah.
When I hear Ustad Amzad Ali Khan Sahab Sarod or Abdul Karim, or I hear Shurya Munkar, or South Indian classicals, Carnatic classical music, or if I hear the Kathakali singers singing from Kerala, because music is happening outside, but what is happening is that you are experiencing within. The experience is not happening somewhere there. Like when I first time heard Japanese classical music, I don't know if I have it here. I was like, wow, where was I? Why didn't I hear it before? And how come I missed out on this before? Then, for example, the modern, not classical, I don't know what to call it. For example, say Eric Satie, the famous, but there's this other person who is still performing called Keith Jarrett.
Okay.
And I think it's just amazing.
Yeah.
It's just amazing feeling, which I've never felt before. The instrument is different. The strings are made differently, the tying and the knot made differently. And then...
I'm so sorry, sir. I didn't catch the name of this artist.
The name is called Sakura Cherry Blossoms. So it's very different, no?
Yeah. This is also Japanese, sir?
Kimio, Kimio Ito, E-T-O. Kimio Ito. This full album of like 50 minutes. In Indian classical, I love vaibhav. He's a Drupad singer, and Zia Mayuddin Dagar.
So we now want to come to the final segment of this conversation, which is movies. So let's talk about which are those most impactful films that you would like to recommend, and some of those like that everyone should watch. Can you just talk about your favorite films?
The first thing which comes to my mind is a Bengali film called Nirjan Shoikote of Tapan Sinha. I think Tapan Sinha is one of the most, I hate that word called underrated, because they call me underrated actor. I find myself way overrated. Tapan Sinha's all his films, Ate Bajare, Nirjan Shoikote, Ek Doctor Ki Maut, Khudi To Pashan, all of them are so poetic, so beautiful, so subtle. It's a French film which was made in 1946 called the Infant of Paradise, not the Children of Paradise, which is an Iranian film. Infant of Paradise. I think at that time, 1946, it talks about art and the relationship between producers and directors. It's a huge scale movie, and I didn't know how they made that at that time. It's unbelievable. There's this beautiful film, Japanese film called The Floating Willow. Green Papaya. It's fairly modern film. The story is set in Vietnam, but it was shot. The indoors were probably shot in France. It's a story of a maid and the relationship between the maid and the family and the hierarchy. Amazing film. Like I have a hard drive which is curated by my teacher.
Wow.
Who curated with this was his criteria that he would watch it 3 or 4 times, and even again after that, if he feels like strongly watching it again, then only he kept it. So his criteria probably was that the aftertaste that it leaves you with,
Yeah.
and the feeling of a bit gentle upliftment. It's like you feel a bit wider. There's a difference between a fast food and homemade food, when you have healthy food. So all these films which are coming out from Tamil Nadu and Andhra Pradesh and Mumbai, most of them are like chatpata, khana, which are extremely bad for your emotional health because it doesn't uplift you, it doesn't make you a wide person, it makes you a revengeful person. It makes you a person who believes in very trivial philosophy, which are not wise. And we have a reservoir of wise people in India who has left you with so much of wisdom. And cinema is a powerful medium, so we cannot use that medium irresponsibly. Hello, my name is Adil Hussain, and I'm here talking to Disha and Vaibhav on Chalchitra Talks. So please come and subscribe this wonderful channel where they really talk about something which generally is not talked about in other talks. So there's something subtle, something beautiful. So go ahead and subscribe.